When a woman understands that her peace is not something to be negotiated, borrowed, or handed away in pieces, emotional distance is not abandonment. It is the conscious decision to return to oneself before being pulled into the emotional tides of another. It is the pause between stimulus and response, the breath taken before words are spoken, the choice to remain rooted rather than reactive. In that space, a woman discovers a stillness that she may have forgotten existed within her. And it is within that stillness that true strength emerges, quiet, subtle, steady, and deeply commanding. Inner stillness is the quality that arises when a woman no longer seeks validation from outside of herself. It appears when she stops trying to control outcomes or win affection through effort. When she chooses to observe instead of chase, reflect instead of react, and breathe instead of break. It is a stillness that forms when she realizes that nothing she tries to force will ever bring her what only alignment can. This stillness is not passive, it is active. It is the discipline of choosing clarity over chaos, patience over impulse, and wisdom over emotional entanglement. Men feel this stillness long before she ever speaks it. Energy always arrives before words. When a woman becomes emotionally distant in this healthy and intentional way, her presence shifts. She no longer responds instantly. She no longer over-explains. She no longer rushes in to fix or soothe or hold more than her share. Instead, she creates space. Space for a man to feel his own actions. Space for him to sense the weight of his choices. Space for him to step forward without being pulled. This space is what makes the stillness inside her so powerful. Because stillness is not emptiness, it is control. Stillness commands respect because it cannot be manipulated. A still woman cannot be rushed into insecurity. She cannot be baited into conflict. She cannot be trapped by old patterns or triggered by emotional games. Her distance becomes a boundary that says, I do not collapse just because emotions rise. I do not forget myself just because someone else is uncertain. I do not abandon my center for temporary connection. This self-containment awakens a deep recognition in a man. He senses that she is not governed by fear. He feels that she cannot be pulled off balance. And in a world where many react instantly and emotionally, her restraint stands out. Emotional distance cultivates inner stillness by teaching a woman to listen to herself again. She begins to notice the difference between her emotions and someone else's energy. She learns to separate her desires from her insecurities. She becomes aware of when she is giving from abundance and when she is giving from longing. This level of awareness is what allows stillness to deepen. And as stillness deepens, reactive behavior dissolves. A woman who is not reactive becomes unpredictable in the most magnetic way. She is no longer controlled by the pull of attention or affection. She moves only when it aligns with her truth. A man respects this because it challenges him. It forces him to rise in steadiness. It pushes him to approach with intention rather than convenience. It reminds him that he cannot rely on her emotional labor to carry the connection. Instead, he must bring presence, clarity, and consistency, qualities that masculine energy respects within itself. When a woman's emotional distance reflects these qualities back to him, he feels compelled to match her rhythm. He feels drawn to the groundedness she holds. He begins to lean toward the calm she creates. Her stillness becomes a silent expectation that he must meet. Inner stillness also makes a woman more discerning. She is no longer impressed by intensity without consistency, words without actions, or attention without effort. Emotional distance gives her the time and space to see patterns clearly, to evaluate rather than assume, and to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. She becomes a woman who chooses slowly, intentionally, and with awareness. This discernment is deeply respected, especially by men who are used to being pursued or emotionally over-invested in. A discerning woman becomes a challenge, not because she plays games, but because she plays nothing at all. She simply stands in her truth, and those who wish to approach must do so with sincerity. Stillness also alters the way she communicates. She speaks less but says more. Her words carry weight because they emerge from reflection rather than reaction. She does not repeat herself. She does not argue endlessly. She does not beg for understanding. She speaks with calm certainty, and certainty commands attention. When she withdraws her emotional urgency, her presence becomes more valuable. When she stops over-explaining her worth, it becomes more visible. When she no longer needs to be seen, she is seen more clearly. In emotional distance, a woman discovers the power of neutrality. Neutrality is not indifference, it is emotional sovereignty. It is the ability to hold space for emotions without drowning in them. It is the ability to witness a situation without losing oneself in it. A neutral woman listens deeply, observes fully, and moves only when her inner guidance tells her to. This neutrality is magnetic because it is rare. Most people are either overly attached or completely detached. True neutrality sits silently between the two, strong enough to stay open yet wise enough to stay grounded. When a woman reaches this state, she becomes unforgettable. Her calmness lingers. Her presence echoes. Her absence is felt as a reminder of what cannot be found everywhere. Emotional distance leads her inward, and inward she finds the stillness that reshapes how she moves, how she speaks, how she connects, and how she is perceived. It is in this stillness that her power becomes undeniable, because nothing is louder than a woman who does not need to raise her voice to be heard. When she learns to stand in the quiet fullness of her own presence, a woman who is grounded does not move from insecurity, fear, or emotional hunger. She moves from awareness. She sees without rushing to interpret. She listens without needing to react. She observes a man's behavior, not his potential. And because she is anchored in her own energy, she reflects reality rather than distorted through longing or anxiety. This is why a grounded woman becomes a mirror. Her steadiness reveals exactly who a man is when no one is bending to accommodate him. A grounded woman does not chase. She does not plead. She does not shape herself into whatever she thinks a man wants. She simply exists in her truth. This alone reveals a man's character, because it forces him to show how he behaves when he is not being enabled or emotionally catered to. A man's patience, consistency, intention, and clarity all become visible when he is dealing with a woman who will not abandon her center to maintain his comfort. In this sense, she mirrors him, not through confrontation, but through neutrality. Her presence forces truth to surface because she does not blur it with emotional noise. When a woman is grounded, her energy becomes settled. She does not try to prove her worth, she embodies it. She does not seek validation, she carries her own. She does not amplify problems, she studies them. In this quiet strength, a man encounters something rare: a woman who does not react based on his actions but reflects them. If he is inconsistent, he will feel her emotional distance. If he is sincere, he will feel her openness. If he respects her, he will feel her warmth. If he takes her for granted, he will notice her withdrawal. She does not punish him. She simply mirrors him. His actions determine her responses, not her fears. A grounded woman becomes a mirror because she is deeply self-aware. She understands her emotional patterns, her triggers, her desires, and her boundaries. She knows what she will accept and what she will not. She has learned to recognize when she is acting from intuition versus insecurity. This level of inner clarity prevents her from projecting her fears onto a man. Instead, she reflects what is actually happening. Her clarity exposes his intentions because she is not blinded by wishful thinking. A man cannot hide behind charm, excuses, or emotional ambiguity with a woman who is rooted in herself. Her awareness picks up on every subtle shift, every change in tone, every inconsistency, every crack in his narrative. She sees because she is present. A grounded woman also reflects a man's emotional maturity. A man who is stable feels comfortable around her. He meets her steadiness with his own. He finds peace in her presence because she does not create chaos. But a man who is avoidant, confused, or emotionally reactive will feel uncomfortable when faced with her stillness. Her calm will make him aware of his turbulence. Her clarity will expose his uncertainty. Her boundaries will confront his lack of them. This is the mirror effect. She does not reveal who she wants him to be, but who he truly is. A grounded woman does not absorb a man's emotional instability. If he is withdrawn, she does not chase to fill the void. If he is unpredictable, she does not adjust her behavior to match his chaos. If he is inconsistent, she does not give to compensate. She remains steady. By staying grounded, she shows him the places where he is not. Her steadiness becomes a contrast. A man soon realizes that her calm is highlighting his confusion, that her emotional control is exposing his impulsiveness, that her boundaries are revealing his lack of discipline. He learns what parts of himself need growth. Not because she demands it, but because she reflects it. In relationships, the grounded woman's mirror effect becomes even more powerful. A man begins to notice how he speaks to her, how he shows up, how he behaves when he is stressed, and how he responds when she stands firm. Because she does not overreact, he cannot hide behind her reactions. He has to face the truth of his behavior without distraction. If he pulls away, he sees that she does not collapse, she stands. If he grows careless, he sees her energy shift into distance. If he rises with effort, he sees her reciprocate with softness. Everything he brings forward is returned to him through her presence. A grounded woman does not use emotional games. She does not manipulate guilt or force a man into clarity. Her power lies in her neutrality. She allows a man to show himself fully, and her responses flow from what he demonstrates, not from what she imagines. This is why grounded women are unforgettable. They make men confront the truth of themselves, not through harshness, but through unwavering self-possession. A man learns very quickly who he is when he stands beside a grounded woman. Her silence shows him whether he can handle calm or if he needs chaos to feel alive. Her boundaries show him whether he respects the feminine or only chases what is easily accessible. Her patience shows him whether he values slow, intentional connection or prefers emotional shortcuts. Her stillness shows him whether he has discipline or if he relies on others to regulate his emotions. Her truth reveals his truth. And because these revelations come from her centered energy rather than confrontation, they cannot be denied. A grounded woman becomes a mirror because she does not distort herself to keep a man. She reflects what he brings. She reveals where he stands. She shows him his strength or his weakness. She teaches him what he values and what he fears. She exposes what he is ready for and what he still avoids. And in this reflection, a man sees himself clearly. Perhaps for the first time, through the calm presence of a woman who refuses to abandon herself for the sake of connection. When a woman chooses to redirect her focus from external validation to inner awareness. Emotional distance is not a wall, it is a doorway back into oneself. It is the moment she stops pouring her energy into trying to be understood, accepted, or chosen, and instead begins to understand, accept, and choose herself. This turning inward creates a shift so powerful that others can feel it without her ever having to announce it. Inner attention becomes a form of energy that radiates quietly, confidently, irresistibly. When a woman steps back from external noise, she begins to hear her own thoughts more clearly. She becomes aware of her needs, her desires, her boundaries, and her inner rhythm. This internal clarity naturally changes her posture, her tone, her choices, and her presence. She is no longer pulled outward by emotion or expectation. Distance removes the distractions, and in their absence, her self-awareness strengthens. With each moment she spends observing herself rather than chasing connection, she becomes more grounded. With each breath she takes without waiting for someone else's response, she becomes more powerful. The energy she once scattered outward now circulates within her, and that inward circulation creates a magnetic field around her. People feel this shift immediately, especially men. When a woman pulls her energy inward, men sense the difference because she is no longer giving without being asked. She is no longer overly available. She is no longer seeking reassurance. Instead, she is centered, calm, and detached from outcomes. This detachment is not coldness. It is inner stability. It is the absence of anxiousness. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that her worth is not dependent on anyone else's attention. This calm, collected energy becomes magnetic because it is rare. Most people move chaotically, emotionally, reactively. A woman who moves from inner awareness stands out effortlessly. Inward attention transforms a woman's energy because it allows her to conserve what she normally leaks through fear, worry, or overgiving. When she stops overthinking what someone else feels, she begins to feel herself again. When she stops trying to control how someone else behaves, she regains control of her own emotional world. When she stops pouring her energy outward, she notices how much of it returns to her. This collected energy becomes a force. It sharpens her intuition, strengthens her boundaries, and elevates her self-respect. The more she turns inward, the more luminous she becomes. Her presence deepens. Her silence becomes meaningful. Her absence becomes noticeable. And her energy begins to draw rather than chase. Distance also slows everything down. It creates mental and emotional space. A woman who gives herself space learns to respond, not react. She learns to choose with intention rather than out of fear. She learns to differentiate between genuine connection and emotional attachment. In this slower, more conscious rhythm, she becomes more selective. This selectiveness turns into mystique. Men feel that she no longer gives herself away easily. They sense that she is no longer emotionally accessible by default. They realize that her attention must be earned, not assumed. This makes her energy more valuable because scarcity increases worth. But the scarcity is not manufactured. It is simply the natural result of her turning inward. When a woman's attention returns to herself, her energy becomes magnetic because she stops trying to convince, impress, or persuade. She doesn't need to. Her presence speaks for her. Her stillness speaks for her. Her boundaries speak for her. Men are drawn to this because feminine self-possession activates masculine instinct. It makes them more attentive, more present, more self-aware. They feel compelled to move toward her because her energy is no longer reaching outward. The pursuit must come from them, not her, and this is the natural balance of polarity. Inward attention also refines her emotional world. She becomes more aware of which feelings are hers and which she has absorbed from others. She begins to notice the habits that drain her. She sees the relationships that weaken her peace. She recognizes the situations where she gives too much. This awareness allows her to shift her behavior in subtle but powerful ways. She begins to prioritize her emotional well-being. She invests in her inner life. She strengthens her sense of identity, and as she does, others sense that she is becoming someone who cannot be easily shaken or manipulated. This strength held quietly becomes magnetic. Distance also gives her perspective. When she steps back, she sees what she was too close to notice before. She sees whether someone's behavior aligns with their words. She sees if the connection is nurturing or draining. She sees if her emotional investment is reciprocated. This clarity prevents her from losing herself in someone else's energy. It helps her remain sovereign, independent, and grounded. And this groundedness is attractive. It is the kind of magnetic energy that does not pull others in through intensity, but through depth. As inward attention grows, so does her self-trust. She stops doubting her intuition. She stops questioning her instincts. She stops silencing the inner voice that knows the truth long before the mind accepts it. This trust radiates outward. A woman who trusts herself moves differently. She walks with certainty. She speaks with intention. She sets boundaries with ease. She does not cling. She does not beg. She does not fear loss, because she knows that losing someone is never as costly as losing herself. This unshakable foundation is magnetic because it shows strength through grace, not aggression. Distance is not disappearance. It is the gentle withdrawal of energy from places that do not nourish it. It is the quiet return to the self. It is the conscious choice to prioritize inner alignment over external attachment. And when a woman lives from this place, her energy becomes a force that others are drawn to without understanding why. She becomes mysterious without trying, powerful without demanding, beautiful without performing, desired without effort. Because only a woman who turns inward can radiate outward with a magnetic energy that cannot be replicated or replaced, because it introduces an energy he is not accustomed to navigating. Most people respond from emotion. Frustration, insecurity, fear of losing connection, or the desire to fix things immediately. They react quickly, often without reflection. And this creates predictable patterns in relationships. A man becomes familiar with a certain emotional rhythm. If he pulls away, she leans in. If he gets distant, she worries. If he acts cold, she becomes warm. If he gives less, she compensates by giving more. These patterns allow him to control the pace and direction of the connection without ever having to confront his own inner world. But when a woman becomes non-reactive, the entire dynamic shifts. The equilibrium he relied on dissolves, and he is forced to face himself. Non-reactivity does not mean silence. It does not mean ignoring. It does not mean pretending not to care. It means responding from grounded awareness rather than emotional impulse. It means choosing intentional action over unconscious reaction. It means observing instead of absorbing. It is the discipline of staying centered, even when someone else becomes uncertain, inconsistent, or reactive. And this discipline disrupts a man's familiar emotional patterns because he suddenly loses the feedback loop he once depended on. A man's behavior often becomes clearer when a woman remains non-reactive. If he withdraws to test her, expecting her to chase, and she stays calm and centered, the test fails. If he becomes distant because of stress, assuming she will become anxious and adapt to him, but instead she maintains emotional balance, he is confronted with a new reality. If he tries to provoke emotional intensity through inconsistency, coldness, or indifference, and she does not give him the reaction he expected, he must face the emptiness his actions create. Non-reactivity shows him the shape of his behavior without softening the edges. It is the mirror he cannot avoid. Men often do not expect non-reactivity because most people respond to emotional triggers quickly. But when a woman refuses to enter the emotional chaos, the man encounters something unfamiliar. He is no longer able to distract himself with her reactions. He cannot hide behind her emotional responses. Without her chasing, explaining, or overcompensating, he must confront the consequences of his own actions. This confrontation awakens deeper awareness because it forces him to reflect rather than avoid, to feel rather than escape. Non-reactivity becomes a form of emotional gravity. It pulls a man inward because it removes the external noise that once allowed him to ignore his own internal world. When she does not react, his mind becomes louder. His thoughts become clearer. He begins to feel the distance he created, the space she allowed, and the imbalance that he must now correct. Her non-reactivity pushes him toward introspection. He must ask himself questions. Why does her calm affect me? Why do I want her attention now that she's not offering it automatically? Why do I feel compelled to step forward rather than drift away? These questions awaken pursuit, not because she manipulated the situation, but because she did not join the emotional pattern he relied upon. A non-reactive woman does not feed emotional volatility. A man used to receiving reactions, jealousy, frustration, fear, urgency, finds himself unsettled when faced with calm instead. Her silence is not punishment, it is clarity. Her stillness is not distance, it is self-possession. And this stability makes him feel the difference between fleeting interest and grounded connection. When she does not respond to emotional triggers, he realizes that he must show up differently if he wants access to her. The lazy, predictable patterns he once used no longer work. He must become more intentional. He must bring steadiness, not chaos. He must step forward, not pull away. Non-reactivity invites him to grow, not retreat. A woman who practices non-reactivity shows him a new emotional standard. She does not argue endlessly. She does not defend herself against baseless accusations. She does not collapse when faced with cold behavior. She does not chase inconsistency. Instead, she chooses actions that align with her self-respect. She listens, observes, and responds only when necessary. This restraint is powerful because it is rare. It disrupts emotional habits that were born from immaturity or convenience, and it invites a man to rise into a more conscious version of himself. Non-reactivity also deepens a man's pursuit because it creates emotional space. When she does not rush to fill the silence, he feels it. When she does not soothe his insecurity, he must learn to soothe himself. When she does not reward inconsistency with attention, he must become consistent if he wants to remain in her world. Her calm becomes a quiet standard, one he must meet if he wants connection with her. This makes him pursue with more intention, effort, and sincerity. He begins to realize that her emotional world is not something he can disrupt without consequence. Her energy is not something he can drain without losing access to it. A man is naturally drawn toward what he cannot easily destabilize. Non-reactivity makes a woman emotionally enigmatic. Her responses are grounded, not predictable. He cannot manipulate her through silence. He cannot provoke her through distance. He cannot control her mood through mixed signals. She is not reactive to his patterns. She is responsive to her own self-awareness. This steadiness is deeply attractive because it shows emotional maturity, discipline, and depth. Non-reactivity forces a man to bring clarity. It compels him to be straightforward. It pushes him to communicate rather than retreat. It awakens the part of him that wants to lead with intention rather than ego. The pursuit becomes deeper because her energy requires depth. It is no longer about winning attention but earning connection. No longer about triggering reactions but creating resonance. No longer about testing boundaries but respecting them. Her non-reactivity is not about withholding emotion. It is about protecting her center. It is about showing that her world does not collapse because someone else becomes uncertain. It is about demonstrating that her value does not decrease simply because someone failed to recognize it in a moment. This level of emotional stability shifts the entire dynamic. It moves the connection from surface-level intensity to deeper energetic pursuit because she no longer participates in the patterns that keep relationships shallow, chaotic, or unbalanced. In this steadiness, she becomes a new kind of challenge, a challenge that inspires not through difficulty, but through depth. A challenge that awakens not through fear of losing her, but through the desire to rise to her level. A challenge that is rooted not in emotional manipulation, but in emotional mastery, because she carries an energy that is rooted, self-contained, and quietly powerful. She is not driven by urgency, fear of losing someone, or the desire to prove her worth. She understands that connection cannot be forced, affection cannot be demanded, and love cannot be secured through pursuit. Instead of running toward a man, she stands in herself. She lets him reveal his intentions through his actions, his consistency, and his willingness to move toward her. This stillness, this refusal to chase, creates an unforgettable presence that lingers in a man's mind long after she has stepped away. A woman who does not chase is not passive. She is purposeful. She chooses where to place her energy and where to withdraw it. She knows that chasing a man disrupts natural polarity. It pushes him into retreat, forces him into defensive energy, and prevents him from feeling his own desire. Men fall for women they move toward, not women who chase them. When she does not chase, she allows him to feel the gravity of his own interest. She lets him experience what it is like to miss her, to think about her, to wonder about her. This space is what creates emotional pull. A man cannot forget the woman he was allowed to pursue at his own pace, because the experience awakens genuine longing rather than forced obligation. A woman who does not chase communicates something profound without ever speaking it. Dasas, I am not seeking to be chosen, I am choosing. This level of self-possession imprints itself on a man's mind. He senses that she is not waiting for his validation. He feels that she is not desperate for his time or attention. He sees that she does not collapse when he pulls away. This emotional stability creates mystery. Mystery creates memory. Memory creates magnetism. A man cannot forget the woman who did not throw herself into his world but remained steady in her own. When she does not chase, she stands out because she breaks the pattern most men have grown accustomed to. Many women respond to male inconsistency with pursuit, texting more, trying harder, giving more. But a woman who does not chase responds with silence. She responds with stillness. She responds by redirecting her energy inward rather than outward. This reversal disrupts everything. A man expects reaction. She gives none. He expects her to fill the space. She lets the space speak. He expects her to try to keep him. She allows him to drift if that is his choice. The absence of pursuit forces him to feel the weight of the connection without her carrying it for him. A man remembers the woman who did not chase because she becomes associated with emotional contrast. She is different from the women who tried to convince him. She is different from the women who feared losing him. She is different from the women who placed him at the center of their emotional world. Her difference becomes unforgettable. The rarity of her energy sets her apart. A man does not forget the woman who maintained her dignity, her silence, and her self-respect when most others would have reacted with urgency. A woman who does not chase gives a man the gift of realizing his own desire. She allows him to feel what it's like to want her, not because she is unavailable, but because she is not trying to secure him. She lets him experience the natural pull that arises when a man senses that a woman values herself. This pull is what plants her in his mind. He begins to think about her because she is not thinking about him loudly. He begins to reach out because she is not reaching in. He begins to open up because she is not suffocating him with emotional pressure. In the absence of her pursuit, he becomes aware of his own. A woman who does not chase becomes unforgettable because she protects her feminine energy. She does not drain herself trying to earn affection that should be freely offered. She does not sacrifice her emotional stability to maintain a connection built on imbalance. She does not lose sleep over someone who treats her as optional. Instead, she preserves her energy for someone who mirrors her effort. This preservation makes her radiant. It makes her calm. It makes her magnetic. Men remember the women who carried themselves with grace, not chaos. When she does not chase, she stays aligned with her worth. She shows through her actions that she knows her value, and value that is certain is value that is remembered. A man cannot forget the woman who never begged for his attention. He cannot forget the woman who accepted his silence without trying to fill it. He cannot forget the woman who let him go instead of losing herself. He cannot forget the woman who remained soft yet self-contained, open yet discerning, available yet not accessible to inconsistency. This balanced energy creates a psychological imprint that lingers long after physical presence fades. A woman who does not chase also becomes memorable because she gives him something to earn. Men value what they work for. Effort creates attachment. Investment creates meaning. Pursuit creates emotional depth. When she does not chase, she allows him to step into the masculine role of pursuing, initiating, building, and proving himself. This dynamic strengthens his emotional connection to her because he chose her consciously, not because she pushed her way in. The act of choosing becomes the root of unforgettable desire. Men do not forget the women who make them grow. A woman who does not chase requires a man to be intentional, present, consistent, and self-aware. She requires him to rise above impulse. She requires him to reflect on his actions. She requires him to show up with clarity. Because she does not chase, he must. Because she does not pursue, he must decide whether he values her enough to pursue. And when a man chooses to step forward on his own, the connection becomes meaningful. The depth of that choice makes her unforgettable. A woman who does not chase is remembered not because she withheld affection, but because she held on to herself. She becomes unforgettable because she let love reveal itself rather than forcing it. She becomes unforgettable because she honored her own energy. She becomes unforgettable because she remained grounded, centered, and whole even in the presence of uncertainty. And a man cannot forget the woman who never attempted to capture him, but instead became the one he naturally returned to again and again because they create clarity in a world where emotional signals are often blurred, inconsistent, or unspoken. When a woman practices emotional distance, it becomes a natural filter that shows a man where the lines are drawn, not through confrontation, but through energy. Emotional distance is not silence used as punishment. It is the quiet withdrawal of access to her emotional world when her standards are not being met. And it is in this quiet withdrawal that a man begins to understand what she values, what she will not tolerate, and what version of himself he must bring if he wishes to stand beside her. Boundaries are often misunderstood as barriers, but true boundaries are simply self-respect expressed through behavior. They are the invisible lines that define the conditions under which a woman will give, receive, and remain open. Many women attempt to communicate boundaries verbally yet behave in ways that contradict them, creating mixed signals. But emotional distance realigns everything. It is consistency in its purest form. A woman stepping back is a statement without words. I do not abandon myself for connection. And this level of internal alignment awakens something ancient and instinctive in a man. Men feel boundaries more than they hear them. They sense them through the way a woman carries herself, through the calmness in her tone, through her refusal to engage in emotional chaos, through her willingness to walk away from disrespect. When she no longer reacts to inconsistency, he feels the boundary. When she stops rewarding minimal effort, he understands the limit. When she withdraws from emotional uncertainty, he sees what she will not accept. Her distance reveals the edges of her self-worth, and those edges create structure, the very structure that masculine energy needs in order to rise. Masculine devotion does not awaken in the presence of chaos. It awakens in the presence of clarity. Boundaries give that clarity. They create a container in which a man can feel purposeful, responsible, and grounded. When a woman is overly available, overly giving, or overly accommodating, he has nothing to rise toward. There is no challenge, no direction, no sense of responsibility. But when she steps back emotionally, she creates space, a space he must consciously choose to step into if he wants connection. That choice activates devotion because it requires effort, intention, and alignment. Emotional distance also reveals whether a man is truly capable of meeting her at the level she desires. If he steps back when she sets boundaries, it means he was never meant to stay. If he becomes defensive, he reveals emotional immaturity. If he becomes inconsistent, he shows that he was relying on her overgiving energy to maintain the connection. But a man who is ready, truly ready, responds differently. Her boundaries awaken something noble in him. He becomes more attentive, more deliberate, more protective of the connection, more disciplined in his behavior. Boundaries do not push him away, they give him a path forward. A man cannot devote himself to a woman who bends herself into shapes to keep him comfortable. He cannot commit deeply to a woman who abandons her own needs just to maintain harmony. Devotion arises when he is confronted with a woman who values herself enough to step back when something feels misaligned. Her emotional distance becomes a signal of her worth, and masculine energy is drawn toward worth, toward earned closeness, toward the opportunity to rise into a stronger version of himself. This does not happen through emotional pursuit. It happens through emotional restraint. When a woman creates emotional distance, she interrupts old unhealthy patterns. Patterns where she over-explains, patterns where she forgives too quickly, patterns where she accepts crumbs instead of consistency. In stepping back, she breaks the rhythm that once made it easy for him to take her for granted. Without the automatic influx of her emotional warmth, he begins to feel the absence. He begins to notice the weight of her silence, the shift in her energy, the meaning behind her withdrawal. And in that noticing, his awareness increases. Increased awareness is the root of masculine devotion. A man cannot devote himself to what he does not consciously value. Distance makes him conscious. Boundaries also awaken devotion because they show a man what he must protect. Devotion is not born from fear of losing a woman. It is born from recognition of her value. When her emotional distance becomes a boundary, he understands that her presence is not guaranteed simply because he wants it. He realizes that access to her emotional world must be earned. He sees that she has standards, and those standards require him to be consistent, clear, and intentional. This realization does not weaken him. It strengthens him. It gives him a mission, not to conquer her, but to stand beside her in integrity. Emotional distance also creates a sense of mystery, not through manipulation, but through self-containment. A woman who does not reveal everything, who does not explain every emotion, who does not rush to close every gap becomes a woman a man must understand through effort. Masculine devotion thrives when a man must work toward understanding, not when everything is handed to him effortlessly. Her boundaries create depth, and depth creates emotional gravity. A man cannot fully engage with the feminine if the feminine is overexposed. He needs space to approach. He needs space to pursue. Emotional distance gives him that space. Boundaries reveal whether a man is motivated by ego or by intention. Ego seeks control. Intention seeks connection. When she steps back, a man rooted in ego will resist the boundary. He will try to pull her back into old patterns. But a man rooted in intention will rise to meet the boundary, not fight it. He will see it as guidance, not punishment. He will treat it as an invitation to become more present, more consistent, more trustworthy. A woman who sets boundaries through emotional distance shows a man the truth of who she is. Someone who values her peace, someone who protects her energy, someone who will not shrink herself to maintain connection. And in that truth, masculine devotion awakens naturally. Because devotion is not born from pressure, it is born from respect. Boundaries command respect. Emotional distance reveals those boundaries. And together, they create the kind of dynamic where a man does not just desire a woman. He devotes himself to her with intention, presence, and depth.